All right, good evening. This is Janine Brinkley from the Appeal Center, and we are happy to have you all with us this evening. We are sorry, my dog, oh my God. He has impeccable timing. So I think the neighbors who I gave the wrong pizza to that was delivered to us are now bringing hand sanitizer in exchange, and he's barking at them. So it's the barter system. Anywho, we're glad you're with us, and I'm just going to share a few words and then turn it over to Scott Dougherty, our presenter for this evening. We're really pleased that you registered for this webinar this evening to learn more about the built-in accessibility features in the various devices and operating systems that students are using to learn at home, like iPads, Chromebooks, Google Classroom, Windows, and other. We really want to make sure you understand the purpose of this webinar is to raise awareness about the features of the technology that students are using already that might be helpful in learning virtually. You're not going to get deep instruction of how to utilize the features, so don't worry about that. Instead, we really want you to just be able to take away one or two things that might be helpful for the learners you support so that then you can explore them further. Excuse me, we'll be taking questions during the webinar using your question field, and we will respond to some of them immediately. Others we will hold on to and respond in follow-up if they're more complex. You also have access to handouts. You have the PowerPoint presentation in the handouts. It should be in a tab in your GoToWebinar pane, and then several other more in-depth tip sheets and information that you can follow through as a follow-up. We're recording the webinar, so you'll be able to go back and access the recording, pause it when you need to, look at it together with others, and we hope you find this information informative this evening. So I'm going to turn it over to Scott Dougherty, and he is going to share with us information about the features that are already built into some of the technology you're using. Scott?
Thanks, Janine. Good evening, everybody. I am coming to you today from the Pittsburgh region. It was a rainy day this morning, but it looks like the sun's out, so hopefully that's coming a bit of your way too. As Janine said, in your panel, probably on the right-hand side of your screen, where all the GoToWebinar settings are, your chat box, your poll questions, there is a handouts tab there. So I've given you a number of PDFs, 4 PDFs, as well as a full-blown PowerPoint. So anything that I provide to you, feel free to use, adapt, make your own. I'm paid with federal dollars, so you already bought my stuff. So this is the big 3 accessibility features across platforms, and it sounds like, oh, he's going to be talking about 3 things. But they're 3 biggies, and I'm going to be talking about a lot of platforms. And by that, I just mean different computers and devices. Usually when I talk about platforms, I'm thinking about Microsoft Windows versus the Apple Mac versus iPads and iPhones versus Chromebooks. So most of this evening when I use the word platform, that's what I'm talking about, essentially the type of computer and the software that you're running from your home. So the handouts are already available to you. Throughout the presentation, you're going to see at the bottom of some of the slides a little blue line with some text in it directing you to one of these documents. So those documents really are for you offline to be able to go in and dig in deep and go through the steps of turning a feature on and using it. I've tried to make those as user-friendly as possible in that regard. Appeal's going to be posting these as well. You see in the upper left-hand corner of this screen there, a bit.ly address and the QR code that will take you to my Dropbox, and you can go to the presentation folders, get the same stuff there. So I've given you a couple different ways to get my things. Tonight is about just watching and getting exposure. Think of it as a tour of European countries. We're going to do about 12 countries in 2 days is the analogy I'll make. So don't feel a need to take copious notes. Hopefully you'll walk away tonight or wheel away from wherever you're sitting with a couple of additional tools to further explore. So as I said, I'm resident of Allegheny County. I work for the Allegheny Intermediate Unit as a training and consultation coordinator in assistive technology and inclusive practices. But I'd like to find out a little bit about who's with us tonight. So you've got some polls opening up now in your panel on the side of your screen. So let's go ahead. Right now, I'm just want to find out the learners that you're supporting, whether that's your child or if you're a teacher or administrator. Who is it that you're supporting during online education or working with through online education? Most of what I'm going to be talking about tonight, all of what I'm going to be talking about tonight, sorry, is computer-based stuff, those platforms I talked about. So birth to 5, I'll apologize. There's not going to be a ton probably unless you're using computers, but I know from family members in our households that tablet use came early, so maybe that is an option. All right, so got about 88% of you in there. And by supporting, I'm also going to ask in another poll question coming up here about that a little bit more. I'd like to know how many students, children are in your household and doing online learning at this point. You may not have any children, so that's a 0. You've got 1 child, 2 to 4 children, or 5 or more. And I know some of you may have students and children with individual devices that they're accessing their instruction and materials with, others may be sharing. And the one main document that I'll point you to in a bit actually is separated into the 3 big areas: text to speech, speech to text, and document annotation. And within those 2 pages for each of those, it covers all of the different platforms. So if you got a middle schooler on a Chromebook and a high schooler on an iPad or vice versa, those documents will be able to help you find the resources that you need for each of those platforms. And then our last question is whether you're providing support during online instruction. So this may be helping to get materials up for the user, reading things to them, helping with annotation. And
actually, there's one other one here first, and then we do the last one.
I saw that. I was going by what's on the slide, sorry. So 100% with individual devices so far. All right, that's a change from this morning. A little more variety. Do we have one more, Janine? Yeah, there we go. And this one is whether you're supporting your learner directly. So again, maybe helping navigate to materials in the online environment, reading or assisting with keyboarding and input of those things. And the tools we're taking a look at tonight might help you to transfer some of that and build some independence in accessing materials through some of the built-in features we'll explore. All right.
The majority have definitely someone providing support. Thanks.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Thanks for entertaining me on that. Just helps me to know who's sitting on the other side of the connection here. So as the registration materials pointed out, we're going to be talking about 3 different classes of features today and looking at them on the Windows environment, Macintosh, iPads and iPhones, and then Chrome, Google, and Android devices to various extents. I'm going to be talking about why these features can be helpful and what purposes they might serve. And then finally, as I mentioned, and primarily in the support documents I gave you, how to actually find those, what things to click on in order to turn these features on your devices if they aren't already turning on. But this is going to be fast-paced and furious. The car is going 60 miles an hour, and we're on Route 1. And Route 1 is my real underlying objective here is I hope each of you can tag on to one thing that makes sense to you tonight and that you think, hey, I can start using this tomorrow, introduce this to my son or daughter or client tomorrow and get the ball rolling. You're going to learn about 800 different things tonight, but I only want you to really worry about one initially, and then once you've got that under your belt and you've played around with it, then we can add the next mile marker and the next one and build from there. So I've actually thrown in a fourth little tool. I wouldn't say it's ubiquitous, but if you've been paying attention along the bottom of your screen, there's been captioning running since we started this presentation. I am presenting today in Microsoft PowerPoint, and probably 2 years ago, Microsoft introduced a subtitle feature, which is what's running here. So it's actually an add-in to Microsoft PowerPoint. If you download the PowerPoint slides later or the PDF versions of the PowerPoint, these links are live. So clicking on those blue links will get you to the place where you can download this feature onto your computer if you're a PowerPoint user. And then the second link is directions on how to use Translator in your presentation, how to set it up. And then finally, that third link is to the Microsoft Translator app. So that photo on the slide is showing the screen we were just on and my phone from last night. So when I was doing the trial run, I was speaking in English, but logged into my device with Spanish as the user. So when you log into the Microsoft Translator app, you give it your name as a participant and you tell what language you're speaking. And if you'll take note, right below the AIU3 logo on your screen, there's a web address, www.translate.it/LKIUW. So while the presentation's live, if you click on that link, it would take you to a web page, ask you to plug in those letters, LKIUW, and then it would ask, who are you and what language are you speaking? And then you would be able to see my captions displayed in the language of your choice. So I'm a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing by training. My students primarily spoke English, so they could choose English on their devices and see exactly what's coming up on screen. But if you have a student speaking Spanish, French, German, any other number of languages, I haven't counted how many are supported now, but there's a number. They would see a real-time translation of those captions in their native language. Where we're seeing English right now. It's really a wonderful app. Google or feature of PowerPoint. Google Slides also has a similar feature called Subtitles. So when you're in presenter mode, or if your child's teacher is in presenter mode, they can click the little CC on their presenter toolbar and it will activate a similar feature. At the present time, Google's does not do foreign language translation, but I think that's probably just a matter of time before that happens. All right, so with that said, we're going to jump in now and talk about text-to-speech across platforms. Janine's going to launch another poll here just to find out if at the present time any of you have students whose IEPs, 504 agreements, or accommodations in the workplace include having some kind of text reading support, whether that's a human reader or technology being used to read. So when we talk about text-to-speech on the various platforms, what I'll be referring to is the computer's ability to read text on screen out loud to the human user. This is done with a synthesized computer voice, and that's actually nice. The voices over the last few decades have improved considerably. They sound much less robotic than they did 25 years ago. And having a synthesized voice gives us the ability to change the speed and the pitch and any number of other features. The voice itself, we can change the gender of the voice we're getting, the language of the voice we're getting in some tools. So it really gives a lot of control to the user. And I see about half of you, exactly half of you, for the 71% who voted, have these kinds of accommodations. Now, in a school setting, sometimes this function is performed by a human. So it might be the teacher, the paraeducator, and other students sometimes who provide some reading assistance. But this might be one of the things you're facing as a challenge now. You've got a couple kids working simultaneously, and this one needs to read 2 pages of text while you're also helping out with dinner and checking in on the other 3. So knowing that this text-to-speech feature at your fingertips could be a way to provide access to the text without necessarily being human read. The wonderful thing about this and the other 2 features we're talking about tonight is they really give us the biggest bang for our buck in terms of giving access to materials and instruction. By giving somebody an electronic document and teaching them how they can have it read aloud to them, it really does let them take control of learning. So if they're having difficulty with reading comprehension, decoding the text independently, they can make use of their auditory channel and listening comprehension to access that same material. I personally use it quite a bit for editing work. So as you or your children are looking at writing some work and then going back and seeing how it sounds, you can quite literally see how it sounds by listening to it. And does it sound right? Does it make sense? Is the flow good? So I very frequently will use text-to-speech to listen for errors and listen for flow. Because quite frankly, you've probably experienced it. Sometimes we write, and because we know what we meant to say, we overlook what we actually said and the errors that are in there. So the text-to-speech can help with that too. And some people find that they really do enjoy accessing text in this manner, or because of their environment. I often listen to emails and web pages on my phone as I'm driving, so I don't have to be reading the text. I can listen to those things at my convenience. So as I mentioned earlier, the handouts are going to be interspersed throughout here. So if text-to-speech is the thing that you really want to take as your one thing to further explore, you'll want to check out the big 3 features across platforms document. I'm going to pull that up really quickly here in Adobe Acrobat Reader. So all of my documents, for the most part, I think one may not have bookmarks in them. But once the document's open here in Adobe Acrobat, there's a bookmark tool that you can turn on in your software. And by doing that, this really is like a table of contents that's available across the document. So I've got a ton of things in here. I'm going to actually collapse these real quick. So this is an 8-page document. First part talks with text-to-speech, then we move on to speech-to-text, and then document annotation. So if you want to learn about the text-to-speech features on your platform, I have the different platforms listed here. And clicking on any one of these links will take you to the directions to how you access text-to-speech on your device. And most of the materials I create, I try to adhere to the use of bold text to indicate what you will click or type on. So you'll click on the Apple icon, go down to System Preferences, go over to Accessibility, look for the Vision group, and click on Speech for the Mac. So this whole document's set up this way. So if you haven't used bookmarks before, they're certainly a helpful thing when they're included in documents. So that's the first one, the big 3 features PDF. So I have an old dinosaur of a Chromebook, and when I talk about this right now, I'm going to maybe say ChromeOS sometimes. That's just the operating system that runs on a Chromebook. So it's not a Mac, it's not a PC, it's a different animal altogether. And mine is a very, very old and crotchety animal. So it wouldn't even let me do a recording without grinding away. So I hope you'll pardon just having a screenshot for this part. But I want to walk you through on a Chromebook because a lot of students are accessing materials in a one-on-one device situation through Chromebooks. And this may be the tool that they have at their disposal. So the numbered lists here are also corresponding to the numbers on screen. You are actually only going to see one of these panels on screen at a time, just for the sake of getting it all on one slide. I've kind of combined them into a composite image. But the first thing we're going to do is click here on our clock down in the bottom right-hand corner, and this will bring up the system menu in your software. The settings cog is this little gear wheel that's right there. And when you click that, it's going to launch a settings panel, usually in the center of your screen. And you're going to scroll all the way down to the very bottom of that panel and look for the word advanced. Once you do that and you click on advanced, it's going to refresh this entire screen and add some additional options in there, accessibility being the one we're looking for. So once we get there, there's two options available to us. So this first one says always show accessibility options in the system menu. My system menu should be showing up there. I fixed it earlier and it disappeared again. But that's this black box here. This is the system menu. So what this toggle button, this little on-off switch is a toggle. What that toggle button does is when you click it, it turns on this accessibility icon right here. It's not on by default, but what this does, it just makes it easier. When we click the clock, accessibility is right here, and we don't have to scroll through all these things to get down to the feature settings. We can just access them right there through that icon. So I'd recommend turning that on. And then the next option is to manage accessibility features, and this is where you'll be able to get in and turn on the text-to-speech. There are actually two text-to-speech options on the operating system. One is ChromeVox, and that's this first option. I tend not to recommend that unless your child or student has a visual impairment and needs a screen reader. They're more robust in terms of the support it provides, but it also alters the way that you interact with the device. So while it's not the most complicated tool, it's also not for the faint of heart sometimes. And it can do funky things and really change the way you interact with the device. So for most users, we're not using screen readers, so I'm not even going to really touch on that today. But the second option here could be valuable across users, and that is to enable select to speak. So again, that's a toggle button. You can just click to turn from gray to blue, and that means it's active. And what that does is it adds this little icon to the left of the clock down in the shelf. And that will allow you to have text that's anywhere on the screen read aloud by the Chromebook. So I'm going to advance to the next screen here to give you a picture example. So I've added that select to speak button down here on my shelf. I went to the Library of Congress page to the Ask a Librarian section, and I'm really curious about what this is here, but not really having success reading that independently. So what I did is I clicked on the button in my shelf, came up to the left and did a click drag across those two paragraphs to text to draw a box around it. And when I let go, in a matter of a second or two, it figures out what the text is and begins reading it aloud. Really nice feature, and the thing I love about it on the Chromebooks is it runs system-wide. So if it's on the screen, you can probably have it read by this little tool there. It's really a nice feature. All right, another option you have, some of our students and schools are using Google Classroom, or students using Chrome browser on their Macintosh or their Windows computers, certainly on the Chromebooks. So there's a third-party app by a company called Texthelp called Read and Write. And it actually does a number of things beyond just text-to-speech. So Read and Write is something that Texthelp has made available for a number of years now to teachers for free. So if you are a teacher working in the schools supporting students, you can follow the link on this slide and it will take you to the sign up page to get a year's access to that. And every year it'll just re-up. I forget if you get an email or if it just continues. But registering there as a teacher will give you full free access to all the features of the software, the read and write software, as well as to a math notation program called Equatio. We're not going to discuss that today, but that's a second product they also make free to their teachers. Now, for families and students, that's probably not the case because we're not teachers. So the second link will get you to a read and write trial. And under normal circumstances, that trial runs 30 days. I think it might actually be extended now. A lot of the companies, because of coronavirus, are really doing their best to support schools and families and give access to tools for free for a period of time to extend their trials. And if that hasn't happened with read and write, it may. But under normal situations, it's a 30-day trial where you get the full feature set. But then at the end of that, this company says, you know, we think text-to-speech is really important. It's one of their big three too. So they have opted that even once the trial expires, to allow users to continue using their product for text-to-speech and also to do some highlighting with yellow and blue highlighters. The full version actually has 4 highlighters, and you can highlight and pull those highlights out, which is a great note-taking resource. You know, if you're studying Romeo and Juliet, you can highlight things about Romeo in yellow, things about Juliet in green, things about the plot in blue, and then tell the extension to pull those out and put them into a brand new Google Doc that just has the highlighted stuff grouped by color or by the order in which they were highlighted. Really a great tool. Unfortunately, that extraction isn't one of the free things. That's a premium feature, but you can still do highlighting. And then if you have a student using iPads as their access method, their platform, so to speak, there is an app by Texthelp, Read and Write for iPad. It looks different. And we'll take a look at read and write in a second here. But on the iPad, this picture here is showing you what it looks like there. So it installs on iPads as an external keyboard, a third-party keyboard. So as a student types on this, it will read the words aloud. It can read the sentences aloud. The blue bar here has word prediction. So I actually made a spelling error in Pittsburgh. I made my best guess. And then it suggested some things too, and he said, oh, it might be this one. So if I just tap on that, it will read it aloud. Oh yeah, that's the one I want, and it's capitalized too, bonus. I can do a swipe up on the word Pittsburgh, and it will replace what I typed up here with the prediction. It's a nice tool, text-to-speech built into it. We're seeing the play button there to be able to listen to things, and it's also got the word prediction feature. You also have a lot of controls in the background in terms of how the keyboard looks and what happens with vowels and the fonts. So nice little tool. All right, let me go into Google Chrome real quickly and show you Texthelp. Yes.
Just one quick question. Somebody asked if you could explain the difference between text-to-speech and screen readers.
Well, text-to-speech and screen readers, they kind of do the same thing, but a screen reader is going to read everything on screen. So I have friends who are deaf-blind. They are not visually accessing their screen. I have friends who are blind who aren't visually accessing the screen. So a screen reader is going to read everything that's there. So it might tell me that right now on this screen, Skip's Quick Tips is the tab that's active, and my cursor is positioned here. So the screen reader is going to give you information about the whole lay of the land on the computer, where stuff is, what's active, maybe font information. If it's a title or a heading or a caption or something, it's a lot of information thrown at a user because they need that. They can't visually access it. So that's what a screen reader does. Text-to-speech is screen reading, but it really only is dealing with the guts of the word processor, the reading document, not all the icons and buttons and other information that's on screen. Hopefully that clarified that question. It's a great question.
So screen readers are primarily used by folks who don't have can't visually interact with the screen.
Right, yes.
And whereas,
visual impairment, blindness,
okay.
deaf blindness, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So like with Chromebox, a deaf-blind user would be able to read in Braille on a refreshable Braille display the contents of the screen. All right. So this here is Google Drive. I'm actually going to switch over to a Google Doc document here and type a horrible sent. Today is Tuesday. Not real creative right now. Tuesday, April 7th. All right. So this is just Google Docs as it installed and is used by students. The extension for Read and Write is up here on the top of the toolbar. It's the little purple puzzle piece. And when I click on that, because I have, come on, there we go. It's a little finicky because I'm running all these things plus a webinar. So when I click on it, it will display all these different support tools for reading and writing. For trial use, you get access to all of them. Once the trial expires, the speech ones here remain, and the yellow and blue highlighter remain. So what this allows me to do is I can come into my text, hit the play button, and unfortunately, GoToWebinar doesn't allow you to hear both my microphone and my computer talking. It was one or the other, and you lost and you get me. So while I'll be able to hear this read aloud, you won't during today's webinar. If you download the presentation, I put some videos in, and those you will be able to hear. So I hit the play button, and a female voice said, today is Tuesday, April 7th. You see it highlighted the entire sentence in yellow to give visual attention to the chunk, so to speak. But then as a specific word was read, it was blue highlighting that moved throughout. So that's a text-to-speech tool in Read and Write for Google Chrome. Like I said, a whole bunch of other support options there with the full product, but the text-to-speech is worth its weight in gold, in my opinion. All right. Whoops. So on the iPad, text-to-speech is actually available on every iPad and iPhone that's been around since, I don't know, version 8 or so, maybe even earlier. But it's not turned on by default. So these are things you have to go into the settings and actually turn on if you want to use them. So the settings icon, I have mine here on my iPad on the bottom left of the dock. So that's a little gear icon again. And when I click that, it'll bring up a list. I'll find General and then go to the Accessibility section. And then in the Vision group, there's a speech option that I'll click, and it will give me two options of things to turn on. The first one is Speak Selection. And what that does is when you hold your finger down on top of a word, it'll bring up these little yellow tabs and allow you to stretch that so you can select things. So if I want to knead into a smooth, I could just click that little yellow tab and just select those 4 words. And what turning on this feature does is it adds the option to speak to this black menu that's above the selection. So if I'm reading a document and I get stuck on this one word, I'm not sure what it is, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, and I only need text-to-speech for that piece, this is a tool that can help with that. Now, if you've got a student who struggles with an occasional word on the page, but generally can and wants to read independently and decode on their own, this might be a great tool to give them that just-in-time support they need. The other tool that you can turn on is a Speak Screen option, and what that does is it adds a gesture that you use 2 fingers, and with your 2 fingers, you start at the very top of the iPad and you swipe down on a page. So if a web page was up here, I would do a 2-finger swipe down the page, and it will bring up this toolbar option to let me listen to the contents of the screen. This will minimize it and just kind of shrink it to the side, kind of like your GoToMeeting panel might be right now. We can slow down or speed up the speech. We can rewind and fast forward, and we can play and pause. Hitting the X here closes the tool until the next time your 2 fingers go up to the top of the screen and swipe down. So again, on the PowerPoint, if you download it, you can actually click this little video and it will show you the steps. So we're clicking on General, Accessibility, Speech. We're turning on those 2 toggle buttons. And then we're gonna bring up Bobby Flay's pizza dough recipe and do a swipe down with 2 fingers, and it will read a portion of his directions here. I stopped it then. And then the next thing, maybe I was reading on my own and I got down to that word need. And I'm not sure how to say that. So I do a long hold. I just press my finger down and choose speak. And I just read that one word. And now I can go on reading the rest. And I haven't had dinner, so this is making me hungry. I'm going to move on. All right. In Microsoft Office, whether you're running on a Mac or a PC, they also have speech capability built into the Office products. Just like the iPad I was talking about before, the speech is there, it's hidden. The speech is there, it's not turned on necessarily. So this document, text-to-speech in Microsoft Office, if your student is using PowerPoint and Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Word, this might be the document you want to look at to see how to turn this on in the Microsoft Word products. It'll take you step by step through the process with some pictures. But what this does is it allows you to add a little speaker icon to the interface, to the window, the tools that you're looking at. So then once you have text up on screen, it would read those aloud. This works in all of the Office products. The one drawback is you have to turn it on in each one separately. So if you want to listen to things in Microsoft Word, you have to follow the steps, going to File and Options in Microsoft Word. And then when you open PowerPoint, you have to do that in PowerPoint too. Go to File and Options and follow those steps. But once you do that once, it stays, but you do have to do it separately for each program you want to use that feature in. So I'll just show you in action a little bit. Again, you're not going to hear this on your computers. Oh, sorry, let's actually bring up Microsoft Word on the local copy, not 365. So we get some text in here on screen. So this might be something I copied and pasted into a document. It could be something I wrote on my own that I want to go then and edit. So I will select the text I want to listen to. And then because I added that speak button, oh, you might actually be able to hear that. I'm going to lean close. You can paste in the embed code for the video you want to add. And then I'll stop.
We hear it.
So, all right. So it'll read from the text that I selected. It does not highlight like you saw Read and Write do, where it was yellow and blue, but I get the bare minimum that I need. It's telling me what's on the page so I can listen to it. Very nice tool. All right, now this one, oh, I love this tool. This came out a couple years ago. It's called the Immersive Reader. It's actually a feature of Office 365, which is the online versions of the software. So I just switched over to Microsoft Word, and you maybe quickly saw George Washington there next to some text. That was actually in Microsoft Word. So we'll be going back and visiting George shortly. But Immersive Reader was launched in the OneNote app a couple of years ago. And Microsoft has slowly been adding it to their other products. So now it's in Microsoft Word, and I believe in PowerPoint. And this adds a whole bunch of features to let a user take control of the text on the screen and what it looks like. So the first thing it does is it's going to strip out all the extraneous stuff. So we'll see a picture of George Washington initially, and when I turn on Immersive Reader, it makes that picture go away and just lets me see the text. It lets me change the color of the font and the background. It has grammar support, so on the picture you're seeing there, some of the words are red, some of them are green. That's because I told it, well, show me the verbs. I want to see where the verbs are in the sentence. Maybe your teacher says, hey, you're not writing descriptively enough, or you're always using the same adjective. So this lets the student see, well, where are my adjectives and which ones did I use? So by clicking this toggle button, it says, oh, continental's an adjective, other's an adjective, great, and first. So it can give them information color-coded to what those are. It has a picture dictionary, so when we click on words, in addition to getting text-to-speech to have the word read aloud to us, you can see an image for some of the vocabulary. And then it will also do translation into one of several foreign languages. either on a word-by-word basis or the entire document. So we're actually going to jump over to Office 365 and take a look at that now. If you haven't seen this before, I'm excited for you. This is a really great tool. So this is Microsoft Word. Whoa, made it a little too big. There we go. This is Microsoft Word 365. So everything's online, saved online in the cloud, so to speak. And in Word, when you go to the View menu here in the ribbon, that's where you're going to access the Immersive Reader. And when I click on it, like I said, it's going to show me a version of this document where things are stripped out. Changes the font to the selection I made. It takes the images away. So these tools up here in the upper right are let me control what happens to the document. I can change the size of the text. I can increase the spacing between lines of text. I can change the font, change the color of the background and the font. So lots of options in terms of what I might want to see, or I can stick to the formatting that the original author had. The second option is for grammar tools. So I could display syllables within the word, show where the syllable breaks are. So again, in terms of someone learning to read, that might be a nice study tool. Or learning the language as an English language learner, that can be a nice support to be able to turn on and off. And as I said, we can then highlight, show me nouns and verbs. The label will just add a little NVA across the top as well. So some nice universally designed options. The text to speech is down here at the bottom. Sorry, I skipped over that. So if I click that, it will read all of this text aloud. So we don't have to go in and turn it on like we do on the old version of Word. And then the reading preferences, this last icon will help us narrow down. So let's say a child's having difficulty maintaining their eye on a line of text here. We can turn on a line focus tool, and it's going to darken the lines above and below the current line, so I can focus my visual attention on one line, 3 lines. It's not doing it for me now. Hold on. I don't know why it's grayed out, but this should go to do 3 lines of text and 5. So my computer's starting to fight me after a long day. The picture dictionary is turned on. So if I click here on Army, it's showing me a picture symbol. It's also giving me the English text. I can listen to this. A computerized voice read that, and I would also hear a Spanish voice saying that word aloud. And then finally, the translation feature. So by word was on right now, but if I choose by document, we would actually see this in the child's native language. That's selected. And again, we could listen to that and hear it read in a Spanish voice. So really a nice feature there. And we can go back and forth between the two. So that's the Immersive Reader. Like I said, it started in OneNote. It's expanded into other Microsoft products now. So it's certainly one to look for if you have a child using Microsoft 365 at their school. All right, there we go. All right, so that's the text-to-speech part. Now we're going to take a look at speech-to-text across platforms. And I got 15 minutes left, so I'm going to talk a little faster and maybe show a little less. But I'm also curious to find out if you right now have accommodations for your children, your students that use scribing, for example, or use speech recognition technologies. About half of you, yes, half unsure right now. So again, rather than text to speech where the squiggles on the page are read aloud to us, this is using our voice to put the squiggles onto the page. So a student can use their voice to type. This can be in addition to the keyboard, or it could be in place of the keyboard for some users and for some tasks. The one thing that is important to say right now at home, noise may or may not be a major concern, but generally speech recognition is better to be used in quiet environments. Home in the bedroom, home at the dining room table is going to result in different accuracy than trying to dictate in a room of 35 other middle schoolers. The distractibility to the student, the distractibility to other students, the noise generated by all those people don't make this particular feature great for large group settings, but in the right place, the right time, and the right activity, this can really be a game changer for students. The technology's changed over years. So about half of you are using this now, that's great. The technology's changed over the years. It used to be you had to dictate word by word with a little separation in between. Now, these tools run on what's called continuous speech. It wants to hear phrases and sentences from you. It does a better job when it hears phrases and sentences. So that's also something to keep in mind with this tool. If your child or student is having difficulty getting their thoughts out and does a lot of and those kinds of utterances in there that aren't contributing to the content, the tools as they exist today can be a little more difficult to support those writing needs. But that being said, they're fantastic when they work, and the accuracy is just getting better and better by the month. So again, across platforms, we have the capabilities. I'm going to actually switch over to Google Docs here to take a look at that. Sorry, went right past it. So the voice typing feature is available in Google Docs and Google Slides, and they put it in the same place. So if you click on the Tools menu here, whoops, voice typing is about halfway down on the screen. There's also a keyboard shortcut associated with it. When we click that, it brings up a little box that lets us change the language. There are over 125 available right now. So you would choose the language in which you're going to speak, and then you just click the icon to start. It is finally sunny here in Pittsburgh, period. It rained most of today, period. I'm happy to see the sun, exclamation point. And then I just hit the green microphone to pause it. So now it's not listening and typing for me anymore. So text to speech in all of the different platforms that you might work with essentially works the same way. You're going to find a microphone and turn it on somewhere, and wherever you've clicked your cursor, that's where the text is going to be inputted. So it's really functions quite similarly once it's up and running. And again, those documents that I'm pointing you to will show you how to turn those on your particular computer or tablet. On the Mac and PC, that feature's been around for well over 10 and 20 years, I think, in the case of Macs. So it's already sitting on your computer waiting to be turned on. They've improved the way that we use them now, so you don't have to train the microphone and teach it how you speak in the ways we had to 20 years ago. The nice thing about those tools on a Mac and PC is because they're running on more robust devices, they can do more robust things. So we can actually do some editing with those features as well that we may not be able to do on our smartphones and iPads. And they also will integrate now with the virtual assistants. So if you call up Siri by name or Cortana on Windows by name, you can have them get you directions, find a definition, spell a word, translate a word. Just tell it what you want it to do, and it will allow you to use your voice to do those things. So lots of power. This particular document here is tip sheet 32 in the handouts that I gave you. It's a big one. It's 23 pages long, and it's packed full of goodies. The speech recognition pieces are page 12 and 13 of that document. But if you spend some time here playing around, you're gonna learn lots of cool things that are hidden on your devices and could be making a difference for you and your children and students. Dictation on the iPhone is built into the keyboard at the bottom there. Same thing with Android phones. I'm not going to play the video now for the sake of time. But as I said earlier, speech to text on most of them, once you've got it up and running, works the same way. Hit the button, talk, and it types out what you say. On iOS, it does let you do a little bit of additional things beyond dictation. So I can say new line to do the same thing as hitting the enter key, or new paragraph to hit the enter key twice. Alrighty, and now we're moving into the home stretch with 9 minutes and 32 seconds left. And I'm going to be talking about annotating PDFs. And by that, I mean marking up documents. Essentially anything that we do on paper, we can replicate on screen with the keyboard and mouse. This I thought was particularly important 3 weeks ago when the newscasters started talking about all of the features, or all the teachers and schools possibly closing and not coming back on Monday because of virus concerns, and that is indeed what happened. And a number of schools maybe sent packets of things home as PDF documents. So then I was thinking, oh, all these families are going to be burning through paper and completing things on paper and then having to figure out how to scan things and get them back to the teacher for grading. And actually, with the tools built into your computer, there's no need to do that. We can actually do the pen and paper kind of things on the device itself. So if you've got students using this as an accommodation now, please go ahead and plug that into the poll. I'm going to take a quick look. So this looks like it might be new for the bulk of us here, so that's good. All right, this might be the one thing you decide to explore a little bit more, and this is going to be the last section of that big 3 features document that I pointed you to. Certainly with cameras, if schools allow them, I see lots of students now taking notes off of the board by snapping a picture, and I'm guilty of that myself at conferences. So the camera is a great way just to get a picture of things. But with these annotation features, we can do a whole bunch more. In most word processors, Google Docs, and in this case on screen, it's Microsoft Word, there is a review and commenting feature which allows you to see the changes that are made to text. So I think back to when I was in 4th grade and we had to create a first draft, then a revision, which we called a second draft, then a third and fourth sometimes, and then we had to do a final copy in cursive. And it was an arduous, painful, anxiety-producing experience sometimes. And I've worked with students over my career who have physical disabilities that much writing just fatigues them, and to rewrite and rewrite and rewrite, while it's important cognitively, really can take its toll physically on a student. So this particular tool can be a nice way to meet the needs of a child experiencing those kinds of things. So in the order that they're shown here, we go to the Review tab in Microsoft Word, and we turn on this feature to track changes. That's going to record what we do and not make it permanent yet. All right, that's the cool part. And what we want to do is we want to see what happens to it. So we're going to click this box here and make sure it says all markup. So it's going to show us the changes that we make. So here initially maybe started my paragraph on George Washington, and my teacher said, oh, there's some things here I think you should change. So maybe the teacher did this. They highlighted George here and said, you don't need to call him his full name all the time. We can delete that. So when you select it and hit the delete key, normally it would go away. And what was there before? I don't know. I don't remember. Here it shows us. So it's just marked up to say, this is something that we might want to delete. There's some things that we might want to add in here. Those are shown with the color and the underlining. And then I have the ability to come into this and say, yeah, I'd like to make that change. So when I click on George, yeah, I think I can delete that. When I accept it, now it's permanently gone. So it's kind of a stopgap for students, and it's a nice way to share documents between teachers and students. Another nice tool is abbreviation replacement. I'm gonna switch over to Microsoft Word here and just show you what this looks like. So on my computer, I'm gonna, whoa, it's not liking me right now. I'm gonna misspell something. My best friend, now watch what happens. It fixed it, is Sean. That was the autocorrect feature. So in Microsoft Word, it said, well, some people frequently misspell this word. It's a common spelling mistake. So they actually put those things into the computer and said, if somebody types F-R-E-I-N-D, fix it and put friend in the way it's supposed to be spelled. We would actually have the ability to program in things though. So I made a little abbreviation because I write my title a lot. So instead of typing all those letters out, there's a ton of them, I just type an accent mark and this abbreviation that I have to remember, but I use a lot, so I remember it. So I type that and I hit the space key or ending punctuation and it expands that fully for me. Now the cool part is that's great, but I have to remember all those things. But sometimes I have to take notes, or I'm writing a paper about George Washington, and I don't need to make that a permanent part of my computer, but I want to use these abbreviations. So I just make them up. George Washington was the first president. All right. George Washington was a general. George Washington did some other fantastic things, whatever. So I go ahead and type with that, using the abbreviation to save time, to save energy. Then at the end of my writing session, I come up here to replace or use Control H. And I tell it, hey, all those times I typed accent mark GW, replace that with this instead. And because I use that funky accent mark, I did that on purpose, I know it doesn't exist anywhere in an English word, so I can hit replace all. And now everything makes sense again. I don't go back 3 weeks later and say, what the heck was that abbreviation? So it's a really powerful tool for writing, for myself and for the students I support. All right, those are in your word processors already there. In terms of PDFs though, there are a couple different types. If you go up to a copy machine and hit the scan button, it can create a PDF, but it's really just a picture. The computer doesn't know there's actual squiggles on the page that are called words, and those words make sense. And then there are other types of PDFs that we can actually click on the text, highlight it, listen to it. So this document here talks in detail about how to mark up PDF documents in Adobe Acrobat Reader, and it talks in detail about the differences between the different types of PDFs you may deal with. Each of your IUs has an AT specialist like myself, so you can certainly and should reach out to those people, and your school staff can reach out to those people to learn more about these things. Acrobat Reader, the free version that you can download, also has the ability to read text aloud. So this screen will just walk through the steps for turning on that speech and listening to the full page, the full document. Sometimes things go wrong and it tells you it's having problems turning this feature on. These items in the blue here are the steps. In case you get that message, it'll tell you what to do. All right, I am going to skip over to Adobe Acrobat Reader in this sake of time here and pull up a document just to show you these features in action. So this is the free version of Adobe Acrobat Reader. They have on the right-hand side a bunch of tools that you can use with the PDF. The comment tool is the one that's going to let us annotate. So when I click that, it brings up this toolbar across the top. And this will allow me to do my tests, quizzes, worksheets, anything that's a PDF. So that T tool there that I selected will let me type. So if I have to put my name at the top of a paper, I can go ahead and type directly on it. Sometimes I even spell my name right. I can draw, although that's a little hard to do with that tool. So more often than not, I use the shape tools over here. This will allow me to underline things on screen or to circle or box things on screen. So pretty much anything that we do with paper and pencil, we can do with the electronic version with these free tools already available in Adobe Acrobat. All right, if you pardon me and hang on for a little bit, I'll just talk through the remaining couple of slides I had here. There we go, once I get back to my PowerPoint. So if you've got a student using a Chromebook or using Google Classroom, Google Drive, there's an app called Cami that does the same things I just showed you in Adobe Acrobat. So this is an extension that runs with Google Drive or Google Classroom, and it allows you to open a PDF and mark up documents just like you saw before. So this was a quiz. I typed my name, the date, filled in the answers, matched from column A to column B. So everything I did with a pencil I could do there. Like Texthelp, this company out of Australia has a 30-day trial. They've actually extended theirs because of the coronavirus. But at the end of the trial period, some of the features turn off. So this will actually read aloud. Mine doesn't anymore. But all the annotation tools to type onto the document, to draw on to the document, they endure. So even once the trial expires, you can continue utilizing this to write onto PDF documents. On the iPad, program that does a similar thing to Cami and to Adobe Acrobat Reader is Claro PDF Pro. I like this one because it does integrate. So if you have a Dropbox account or Google Classroom folder, you can actually put in your username and password. And then when you launch the app, you can say, all right, show me the stuff in my Google Drive. And there are all your classroom assignments and the PDFs. We would pull those up and type onto them just like we have in the other tools I showed you. All right, there we are, a little bit over. So these are, this is an icon reference I'm required legally to put because I used it. I'm glad that artist let me use it. And although this link was embedded on one of the slides, this will get you to information about the Immersive Reader tool. All right, Janine, I'm going to turn it over to you for the last two slides. And thank you, everybody. I hope you learned something new and you got your one thing you're going to explore more.
Thanks, Scott. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate the audience for hanging in there. We have a webinar scheduled for next week, next Thursday, April 16th at noon, and then again at 7. And this is focused on specially designed instruction while learning from home. So we're going to help you think about those supports and services that your kids are were getting in school when they were going to a school building. How can we provide those same supports, meet those needs differently, perhaps, while they're learning at home? And then the next slide is, I just want to ask you for, if you take a moment to complete an evaluation for this evening's webinar, you'll get an email in about an hour. That'll give you the link. We really do review your comments. We use them for planning future activities. If you don't want to wait an hour, we have the link right here, and it's in the PowerPoint that was in the handouts. And if you need any individual assistance, you've heard some things, you feel like you need somebody else to help you think it through, you can contact Peel at info@peelcenter.org, and we will send a follow-up email with some additional information to you as well. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your attention and hope that you learned at least one new thing that you think might help your child or the student that you're supporting tonight. Thanks a lot and have a great evening.
Good night, everybody.